I never thought I'd be that guy. You know, the fool who gets played while thinking he's got it all. But looking back, the signs were right in front of me, and I ignored every single one. My name's Jonathan Parks, 36, CPA, husband ex-husband to Sarah, 34. We had what I thought was a perfect marriage. We met in college, built a life together, and had a beautiful daughter, Emily, now 6. I worked my way up in my firm, while Sarah stayed home with Emily for a few years before deciding she wanted to go back to work. She got a job as a personal assistant for some big-shot lawyer, William Aston. That's when everything changed. At first, I was happy for her. She was excited, had a new routine, felt independent again. She told me about her day, the clients she met, the cases they handled. But then little things started happening. Sarah started dressing differently. Nothing crazy, just more effort, tighter skirts, heels when she used to prefer flats, makeup even on days she wasn't planning to go anywhere after work. I teased her about it at first. Looking fancy, babe. Big meeting today. She just laughed it off. Then came the late nights. At first, it was once or twice a week. Oh, Will needs me to stay and help prepare for a deposition. Then it became the norm. I put Emily to bed alone more often than not, her little voice asking, "Is Mommy coming home soon?" And every time I told her, "Of course, sweetie. Mommy's just busy at work." I didn't know it then, but that was the first of many lies I'd tell myself. One Friday, she told me about a work banquet, fancy dinner, her boss being honored, employees expected to attend. She was weird about it, though. Didn't seem thrilled. "You should come," I suggested. Her reaction was immediate. "Oh, no. It's boring lawyer stuff. You'd hate it." That didn't sit right with me. Sarah always wanted me at these things. She loved showing me off, making jokes about her handsome accountant husband who balanced the fun out of her life. But this time, she wanted me to stay home. That night, she left in a stunning dress, way fancier than needed for a work event. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt something gnawing at me, a whisper in my gut telling me something was off. I ignored it. I wish I hadn't. Sarah left for that banquet, looking like she was walking a red carpet. It wasn't just the dress. It was the way she carried herself, the way she checked her reflection a little too long before leaving. Something about it felt staged. I tried to shake it off. I put Emily to bed, cleaned up around the house, and settled in to watch some TV. But I couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying Sarah's reaction when I suggested coming along. She'd never shut me down that fast before. Around midnight, I texted her. "Hey, everything okay?" Getting late. No response. I tried calling. Straight to voicemail. Now, Sarah wasn't the type to ignore messages, especially if I had Emily. Even if she was busy, she'd at least send a quick all good or a heart emoji. But this? Silence. At 1:30 a.m., she finally walked through the door. Her hair was a little messy, makeup slightly smudged, but she tried to play it cool. "Hey, sorry my phone died," she said, kicking off her heels like she hadn't just waltzed an hours late with no explanation. That was a lie. Sarah never let her phone die. She was glued to that thing, Instagram, Pinterest, texting me about the most random stuff during the day. But I let it slide. "Banquet go well?" I asked, watching her closely. She shrugged. "Yeah, same old stuff. Boring speeches, a lot of standing around." Something about the way she avoided eye contact made my stomach twist. Then she walked over and kissed me, soft, almost hesitant, like she was checking if I'd noticed something. And I did. A different perfume. Not hers. Sarah always wore the same floral scent, something light and fresh. But this was musky deeper. A man's cologne. My chest tightened, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe someone hugged her at the banquet. Maybe she brushed past someone at the bar. I wanted to believe her. I needed to, so I let it go. But that night as she showered, I did something I'd never done before. I checked her phone. Locked. Sarah never used a lock screen before. My hands felt cold. My heart pounded. This wasn't nothing. The cracks had started to show, and I was about to fall right through them. Lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I kept telling myself I was overreacting. A locked phone? So what? People lock their phones all the time. Maybe she just wanted privacy. Maybe Emily had been messing with it, and she put a password on so our daughter wouldn't delete something important. A million excuses ran through my head, but none of them settled the knot in my gut. The next morning, Sarah was back to normal, or at least, she was trying to be. She kissed me on the cheek, ruffled Emily's hair, and hummed as she made coffee like she hadn't come home late, reeking of a stranger's cologne. I played along. You left your phone unlocked before. Why the password now? Her hand froze mid-stir in her coffee, just for a second. Then she forced a chuckle. Oh, Will told us to be more careful with client info. Lawyer stuff. Will again. I wanted to believe her, but something about the way she said it, too quick, too rehearsed, felt wrong. Still, I didn't push. Instead, I decided to be smart about this. Sarah had always been good at covering her tracks, but if she was hiding something, she'd slip up. And when she did, I'd be ready. The first clue. That afternoon, Sarah was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the counter. My heart jumped. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. My blood turned to ice. I stared at it, hoping I was hallucinating. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe. The phone buzzed again. You looked incredible in that dress. Wish I could have taken it off myself. I barely heard the water running anymore. I should have barged in, confronted her right then and there. But I didn't. I took a deep breath, memorized the number, and let the phone be. This wasn't some one-time thing. This wasn't just a mistake. Sarah was having an affair. And now, I was going to find out everything. After seeing those texts, I felt like my whole body had gone numb. I wanted to storm into that bathroom, rip open the shower door, and demand answers. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I grabbed my own phone, took a picture of the messages, and quickly saved the unknown number. If Sarah was cheating, I needed proof, real proof, not just accusations she could lie her way out of. A minute later, she stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, steam following her like a scene in some bad movie. She smiled at me. Why are you looking at me like that? I forced myself to smile back. Just thinking about how lucky I am, the words felt like poison on my tongue. Sarah laughed, walking over and giving me a kiss on the forehead. You're sweet. I almost recoiled. Almost. Instead, I just nodded and watched as she walked into the bedroom to change. She had no idea. Step 1. Who's the number? I went to my office and typed the number into Google. Nothing. Tried a reverse lookup site. Just listed as a private cell. Fine. I wasn't stopping there. I messaged my friend Dave, a tech guy. Hey, random question. Know any good ways to ID an unknown number? He sent me a few sites to check. One required a small fee, but at this point, I didn't care. I paid it, entered the number, and waited. Owner, William Aston. My stomach dropped. Will, Sarah's boss. I gripped my phone so tight my knuckles went white. I had suspicions. I thought maybe she was seeing someone. But seeing him? The guy she had been working late with. The guy she constantly brought up in conversation. The guy she insisted I didn't need to meet. It was like everything clicked into place. The late nights. The extra effort with her appearance. The new phone lock. The way she never wanted me near her office. And now, text from him about last night being amazing. She wasn't just cheating. She was having a full-blown affair with her boss. And she had no clue that I knew. Step 2. Play it cool. I took a deep breath and made a plan. If I confronted her now, She'd deny it, twist the story, maybe even turn it back on me. No, I needed more. I needed undeniable proof. So I decided to wait, watch, collect everything, because when I finally exposed her, she wasn't going to have a single way out. Knowing the truth and pretending I didn't, that was the hardest part. Every time Sarah smiled at me, every time she kissed me, every time she called herself my wife, it felt fake. Like watching a bad actress playing the role of a devoted spouse. But I kept my cool. I had to, because if I played my cards right, she'd never see it coming. The first test. That evening, I decided to test her, see just how deep her lies ran. At dinner, Emily was babbling about her day, completely oblivious to the tension sitting in my chest like a stone. Sarah was scrolling her phone, smiling at whatever she was looking at. Probably him. I cleared my throat. So, how's work? Sarah barely looked up. Same old, just a ton of paperwork. I watched her carefully. Well, keeping you busy? Her fingers paused on the screen, just for a second. Then she put the phone down and nodded. Yeah, he's been piling on the work. I might have to stay late tomorrow again. Stay late. With him. I forced a casual shrug. Maybe I'll swing by and take you out for a quick dinner. You'll need a break. Her eyes darted to mine. Oh, no, don't. I won't even have time to eat. Liar. She was good. I'd give her that. But I was better. All right, I said, acting like I believed her. Let me know if you change your mind. She smiled, relieved, and went back to her phone, probably texting him right there at the table. I clenched my jaw, holding back the urge to snatch it out of her hands. Not yet. Step 3, gathering proof. I needed more than just a text message. I needed something solid, something she couldn't explain away. So I did what any betrayed husband would do. I hired a private investigator. His name was Mark, a buddy of Dave's. Quiet, professional, and most importantly, discreet. When I met with him the next day, I laid everything out. The texts, the late nights, the boss's name. Mark nodded. I'll tail her. Get you what you need. I exhaled, feeling a weight lift off my chest. Now! It was only a matter of time, the beginning of the end. That night, as Sarah climbed into bed next to me, I stared at the ceiling, my heart pounding with a mix of rage and anticipation. She thought she was getting away with it, thought I was clueless, thought I was still the loving, doting husband who trusted her completely. But she was wrong, because the truth was coming, and when it did, it would destroy everything. For the next few days, I played my role perfectly. Loving husband, clueless fool. But inside, I was counting down the minutes until Mark, the private investigator, came back with answers. Sarah kept up her act too, kissing me goodbye every morning, texting me throughout the day with things like busy at work, love you red heart, while probably sitting in his office, wrapped up in his arms. But I was done believing the act. I just needed to see it with my own eyes. The first big clue. 2 nights later, Mark called me. You're going to want to see this. I met him in a parking lot near his office. He handed me a folder and a USB drive. She's been lying about staying late, he said, looking me straight in the eye. She's not working. She's spending time at a hotel with him. My stomach clenched, even though I knew. Hearing it out loud hit differently. I opened the folder. There she was, in crystal clear photos, walking into a high-end hotel downtown with Will. In one shot, he had his hand on the small of her back. In another, she was laughing at something he said. And then the last one, her leaning in and kissing him outside the hotel doors before they went inside. I swallowed hard, my hands gripping the folder so tight my knuckles turned white. There was no more doubt. No more excuses. Sarah was cheating on me. The calm before the storm. I went home that night and acted normal. Kissed Emily goodnight. Told Sarah I loved her. She had no idea what I knew. But I wasn't going to explode right away. No, that was too easy. I wanted her to feel it, to realize she wasn't as smart as she thought. So I made a plan, one she'd never forget. Holding those photos in my hands, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't just angry anymore. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was ready. Sarah thought she was playing me, thought she was sneaking around, covering her tracks, lying straight to my face. But now, I had the upper hand, and I was going to use it. Step 1. The perfect trap. The next morning, I acted like nothing was wrong. Kissed Sarah goodbye, told her to have a great day, and watched as she left for work, which, if Mark was right, actually meant another night with Will. I waited until she was gone, then called Mark. I need you to tail her again tonight. I want the exact room number this time. Got it, he said. Next, I made a call to a lawyer. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to take everything she thought she had control over and rip it out of her hands. Step 2, a little test. That afternoon, I sent Sarah a text. Me, thinking of surprising you at work today. Maybe take you out for lunch. I watched the little typing bubble appear, then disappear, then appear again. Finally, she answered, Sarah, oh babe, I wish. But I have so much to do today. Will has me running around all over the place. Rain check. Liar. I smiled at my screen. She had no idea I already knew where she was really going. No problem, I texted back. Love you. She sent a heart emoji. I nearly laughed. Step 3, the moment of truth. That night, Mark sent me a text with a hotel name, room number, and timestamp photos of Sarah walking in with Will. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. This was it. The moment everything changed. I grabbed my car keys, took a deep breath, and drove to the hotel. Not to confront them. Not yet. But to set the stage for what came next. I parked a block away from the hotel, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight I thought it might crack. This was it. Sarah wasn't just lying. She wasn't just emotionally distant or making a mistake. She was in a hotel room, right now, with another man, our marriage, our life, our daughter thrown aside like none of it meant anything. And she thought I had no clue. The setup begins. I wasn't here to make a scene. I wasn't here to scream or beg. I was here to end this on my terms. First, I texted Mark. Still there? A second later, he responded, Yup, room 807. They've been inside for 45 minutes. No sign of them coming out anytime soon. Good. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I had never thought I'd need to call. Sarah's parents. Her mother, Linda, picked up. Jonathan, how are you, sweetie? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Hey, Linda, I need to talk to you. And Roger. It's about Sarah. It's serious. A pause. Then, of course, dear. Are you okay? Not really, I admitted. Can you come over to my place tomorrow morning? I think you need to hear this in person. Linda hesitated, then sighed. We'll be there. Perfect. Step 2, the final touch. I wasn't done yet. I scrolled through my contacts and found Will's wife's number. Yeah, he was married, too. Mark had found her through social media. A woman named Jessica. 2 kids. A life that was about to be shattered just like mine. I hesitated for half a second. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about doing the right thing. I hit call. She answered on the second ring. Hello. I took a deep breath. Jessica, my name is Jonathan Parks. I think you should know what your husband is doing right now. Silence. Then she whispered, What? I gave her the hotel name, the room number, the time they checked in. Then I sent her the photos. Jessica didn't scream, didn't cry. She just whispered, I'll be there in 10 minutes. I leaned back against my car seat, exhaling. Everything was in motion now. Sarah and Will had no idea, but their perfect little fantasy, it was about to come crashing down. Sitting in my car outside the hotel, I felt an eerie kind of calm settle over me. The kind of calm that comes when you know there's no turning back. Sarah and Will thought they were untouchable, thought they could sneak around, lie to our faces, and never get caught. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Jessica arrives. 10 minutes later, a black SUV screeched into the hotel parking lot. Jessica stepped out, and I could tell just from looking at her, she already knew. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. She looked cold, controlled. She walked straight toward me. Room 807? I nodded. You sure you want to do this? Her eyes burned with quiet fury. I need to see it for myself. I followed her inside. The elevator ride. Neither of us spoke on the way up. The elevator dinged for the 8th floor, and we stepped into the hallway. Mark had already texted me that they hadn't left the room. Jessica took a deep breath. Then she raised her fist and pounded on the door. Loud, hard, no hesitation. The moment of truth. For a second, nothing happened. Then, muffled footsteps. A pause. Finally, the door cracked open. Will stood there, shirtless, hair messy, wearing a guilty man's expression. Jessica's voice was sharp as a knife. Where is she? Will barely had time to react before Sarah appeared behind him, wrapped in a hotel robe, her hair damp. Her eyes widened when she saw me standing behind Jessica. All the color drained from her face. J. John, she stammered, gripping the robe tighter around herself. I didn't say a word. I just smiled. Jessica pushed past Will, stepping into the room. Sarah tried to back away, but Jessica pointed a shaking finger at her. You disgusting, pathetic homewrecker. Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. It's not what it looks like. I actually laughed. Really? Because it looks exactly like what it is. Will tried to step forward, raising a hand. John, listen. I cut him off. Don't. Just don't. Jessica wasn't finished. She turned to her husband, her voice dangerously calm. You threw away our marriage, our kids. For this. She gestured at Sarah like she was a piece of trash on the floor. Sarah snapped out of her shock. I didn't mean... Shut up. Jessica shouted. You don't get to talk. You don't get to pretend you're innocent. You knew exactly what you were doing. Sarah started crying. John, please, let's just go home and talk about this. I shook my head. There's no home anymore, Sarah. You burned it to the ground. The final blow. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the manila envelope. Sarah frowned. What's that? I tossed it on the bed. Divorce papers. Already signed. You can keep the house, for now. But I'll be going for full custody of Emily. Sarah collapsed. Literally dropped to the floor, sobbing. No, no, John, please, I love you. I love our family. I just stared at her. No, you don't. You love the thrill. You love the attention. But love, real love, you killed that a long time ago. I turned to leave. Jessica was already walking out, head high, dignity intact. Will tried to follow her. Babe, wait. She spun so fast he flinched. Don't you dare call me that. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. And just like that, we walked out, leaving Sarah and Will behind. The aftermath begins. The doors to the elevator slid shut. Jessica exhaled, rubbing her temples. So, what now? I thought about it, about everything I'd lost, everything I'd gained. Then I smiled. Now we move on. The drive home was quiet. No yelling, no crying, just silence. The kind that comes after a storm wrecks everything in its path. Jessica had gone her way, back to deal with her own broken home, and I had gone mine. But I wasn't walking into a home anymore. I was walking into the wreckage of one. The first call. An hour after I got home, my phone buzzed. Sarah. I ignored it. A minute later, Another call. Then another. By the fifth, I finally picked up, if only because I wanted to hear just how desperate she'd gotten. The moment I answered, her voice cracked through the speaker. "John, please. You have to listen to me." I didn't say a word. She kept going. "I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't in my right mind. It was never about love, John, I swear. It was a mistake." I let out a slow breath. 3 years, Sarah. Silence. 3 years, I repeated. "And you want to call that a mistake?" Her breath hitched. I just... Save it. I cut her off. "You weren't sorry when you did it. You were only sorry when you got caught." She started crying again. I felt nothing. "I'll be by tomorrow to pick up some things. You have until then to figure out where you're staying, because I won't be the one leaving." Before she could respond, I hung up, and this time, I blocked her number. The damage spreads. By morning, word had spread. Sarah's parents showed up at my house, faces pale, looking like they had just gotten the worst news of their lives. Linda clutched her purse like it was the only thing holding her together. "Jonathan, please tell us this isn't true." I sighed. "It is." Roger, Sarah's dad, shook his head. She said it was a misunderstanding, that you blew things out of proportion. I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. Did she mention the hotel? The texts? The 3 years of sneaking around behind my back? Their faces crumbled. Linda covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh my God!" Roger just turned away, rubbing his temples. What the hell was she thinking? I had no answer for them, because, honestly, I didn't think Sarah was thinking at all. The last goodbye. When I went back to the house that evening, Sarah was already packed. Suitcases by the door, her face blotchy from crying. She looked up when I walked in. "John, please, can we?" "No." She flinched like I had slapped her. I walked past her, grabbed a duffel bag, and started packing some clothes. The essentials. I didn't need much. I'd be staying with a friend for now, at least until I had full custody of Emily sorted out. Sarah stood there, wringing her hands. Do I even get to see her? I zipped up the bag and turned to face her. "That depends. Are you going to lie to her like you lied to me?" Tears streamed down her face. "John, I don't want to lose my family." "You already did." She broke then, sobbing, collapsing onto the couch. I didn't stay to watch. I had nothing left to say to her, because this was the end. Leaving that house for the last time, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Relief. Sarah was out of my life, and the weight of her betrayal was no longer suffocating me. But that didn't mean everything was over. There was still Emily to think about, still the legal side of things to handle, still the damage to clean up. And Sarah? She wasn't done trying to weasel her way back in. The custody battle begins. I met with my lawyer the next morning. His name was Paul, an older guy with sharp eyes and zero patience for nonsense. I liked him immediately. "Full custody?" he asked, scanning my file. I nodded. "She's been lying to me, sneaking around for years. I don't trust her judgment. I want my daughter with me." Paul sighed, leaning back in his chair. "You've got a strong case. She cheated for 3 years, lied repeatedly, and prioritized her affair over her family. But be prepared. Mothers are usually favored in court unless we prove she's unfit." Unfit. Sarah wasn't a bad mother, at least, not before all this. She loved Emily. She took care of her. But now I wasn't sure. Could I trust her not to put herself before our daughter? Could I trust her at all? Paul saw the hesitation in my face. "We'll fight for full custody. If the court won't grant it, we push for majority custody. The affair gives U.S. leverage. Leverage. That's all Sarah was now. A legal battle. A problem to be solved. She had turned herself into an obstacle between me and my daughter, and I was going to remove it. Sarah tries to apologize again, That evening, I got an email from Sarah. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won out. Subject: Please read, John. John, I know you hate me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But please, I am begging you to hear me out. I ruined everything. I know that now. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't seeing clearly, and I let my selfishness destroy the best thing that ever happened to me. I miss you. I miss Emily. I miss us. Please, can we talk? One last time? Sarah. I stared at the screen. For a second, I actually felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just emptiness. She wanted to talk? Too bad. I replied with 2 words. Talk to my lawyer. Then I blocked her email. She had made her choices. Now she had to live with them. Moving forward, over the next few days, I focused on what mattered, Emily. I took time off work to be with her. We went to the park, watched movies, played board games. She was too young to fully understand what was happening, but I could tell she sensed something was different. One night, as I tucked her in, she looked up at me with those big, innocent eyes. Daddy, when is Mommy coming home? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Mommy's staying somewhere else for a while, sweetheart. She frowned. Did she do something bad? I hesitated. She made a mistake. Emily thought for a second, then nodded, accepting it in the simple way only kids can. Okay, can we have pancakes tomorrow? I smiled. Of course, baby girl. Sarah may have broken our family, but I wasn't going to let her break Emily. Blocking Sarah should have been the end of it. But people like her, they don't just accept consequences. They fight, they manipulate, they claw their way back, no matter how much damage they've done. And Sarah, she was about to prove just how desperate she really was. The uninvited guest. It was a Friday evening. Emily and I had just finished dinner, pancakes as promised. She was curled up on the couch, watching cartoons, while I cleaned up. Then came the knock at the door. A heavy, urgent bam, bam, bam. I froze. No one knocks like that unless they want something. I opened the door, and there she was. Sarah. She looked like a mess. Hair in a tangled bun, eyes red and puffy like she hadn't slept in days. She was still wearing the same coat she'd worn when she left, like she hadn't even unpacked. John, please, she whispered. Just let me in. I didn't move. No, her lip trembled. I need to see Emily. I glanced back. Emily was still on the couch, oblivious. Not tonight, I said firmly. We'll figure out custody in court. Sarah clenched her fists. She's my daughter, too. I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. And where was that motherly instinct when you were screwing your boss in a hotel? Her face crumpled. It was a mistake, she choked out. John, I wasn't thinking. I was lost. I felt trapped in routine and what made me feel. I cut her off. Spare me. I'm not interested in your excuses. Sarah let out a ragged breath. John, please. I'm begging you. I'll do anything, therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. Just don't shut me out. I studied her for a long moment. Then I said the one thing she never expected. Sarah, you don't love me. You love the safety I gave you. And now that it's gone, you're panicking. Tears spilled down her face. That's not true. I just shook my head. Go home, Sarah. Whatever home even means for you now. She didn't move right away. She just stood there, shaking, like she was about to collapse. Then, finally, she turned and walked away. I waited until she got into her car and drove off before heading back inside. Emily looked up at me. Who was that? I forced a smile. Just someone who needed directions. She nodded, satisfied, and went back to her cartoons. And me? I sat down, exhaling slowly. Sarah was unraveling. And somehow, I knew this wasn't over yet. Sarah stayed quiet for a few days. No calls, no emails, no surprise visits. For a moment, I thought she'd finally gotten the message. I should have known better, because when people like Sarah start losing control, they don't just let go. They go nuclear. The court papers. It was Wednesday morning when I got served. I was halfway through my coffee when a knock came at the door. This time, it wasn't Sarah. It was a guy in a suit, holding a thick envelope. "Jonathan Parks?" "Yeah. You've been served." I took the papers, my stomach sinking. Custody hearing request. Sarah was fighting back. The lies begin. I called Paul, my lawyer, right away. He skimmed the paperwork, his expression darkening. "She's claiming you're emotionally neglectful, that Emily would be better off in her care." I laughed out loud. "You mean the same Emily she abandoned for her affair?" Paul didn't laugh. "John, courts don't always care about that. If she spins the right story, it could get messy. Messy. That was exactly what Sarah wanted. She couldn't undo what she did. She couldn't take back the affair, or erase the photos, or pretend she didn't break everything we built. So, instead, she was doing what cheaters do best, rewriting history. The last conversation. That night, I did something I swore I wouldn't. I called Sarah. She picked up on the first ring, her voice breathless. "John, you're seriously trying to take Emily away from me?" Silence. Then she spoke, soft, shaky, rehearsed. I don't want to lose her." I clenched my jaw. "You lost your family when you decided a cheap hotel was more important." Her voice cracked. "I made a mistake. I'd heard enough. I'll see you in court, Sarah." Then I hung up. The final battle. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about Emily. About making sure she didn't grow up in a house built on lies. Sarah wanted war? Fine. She was about to find out just how much she'd already lost. The day of the custody hearing came fast. I walked into that courtroom with my lawyer, my evidence, and one simple goal: make sure Emily stayed with me. Sarah was already there, sitting next to her attorney. She looked smaller than I remembered, like all the fight had drained out of her. But I wasn't about to let that fool me. She'd already shown how far she was willing to go, and I wasn't about to let her win. Sarah's story falls apart. Her lawyer went first, painting her as a loving, devoted mother who had lost her way for a short period of time but had since reformed. Then came the accusations against me. Mr. Parks is an excellent provider, but his demanding job leaves him emotionally distant. A child needs her mother's presence, her nurturing. Mrs. Parks is committed to co-parenting and believes Jonathan's anger over their marital issues should not cost Emily her relationship with her mother. I almost laughed. This wasn't co-parenting. This was damage control. When it was my turn, Paul stood up, calm and confident. "Your Honor, we have photographic evidence proving Mrs. Parks engaged in a long-term extramarital affair, repeatedly neglecting her family responsibilities for years. We also have records of her deception, as well as testimony confirming she prioritized her affair partner over her own husband and child." Then, the final blow. Text messages from Sarah to Will, laughing about the night she lied to me. The judge skimmed through them, his face unreadable. Then he looked at Sarah. "Mrs. Parks, do you deny these claims?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "No, Your Honor." And just like that, her case crumbled. The verdict. After a tense deliberation, the judge made his ruling. Primary custody awarded to me. Sarah would get visitation, but she would not have full control over Emily's life anymore. I exhaled, relief washing over me. Sarah, meanwhile, looked shattered. She turned to me as the court dismissed, eyes glassy with unshed tears. "John, please." I didn't even stop. I just walked out. The aftermath begins. Sarah had spent years lying, sneaking, cheating, thinking she'd never get caught. She had risked everything for a man who didn't even show up to support her in court. Now, she had to live with the consequences. And me? For the first time in a long time, I was free. It was over. The judge's ruling was final. Emily stayed with me. Sarah lost, not just in court, but in life. She lost her marriage, her home, and the stability she had taken for granted. And the best part? Well, didn't even stick around. The moment things got messy, he disappeared. No grand love story, no riding off into the sunset. Just another selfish man, ditching a woman the second she became inconvenient. I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy that part. Sarah's last plea. A week after the ruling, Sarah showed up at my door. This time, there was no screaming, no blaming, no manipulation. Just Sarah, smaller, broken. "Can we talk?" she asked. I let out a slow breath. There's nothing left to say. She swallowed hard. I know, but I need to say it anyway. I let her in, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted to watch her say it. Her final words. Sarah sat on the couch, hands clenched together like she was holding herself together. "I ruined everything," she whispered. "I know that, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But, John, I do love you. I always did." I just stared at her. "If you loved me," I said, "you wouldn't have done what you did." Tears slipped down her face. I was selfish. I let my own insecurities make me chase something I never really wanted. I thought I needed more, but all I did was destroy the best thing I ever had. She looked at me then, truly looked at me. If I could take it all back, I would. I believed her, but it didn't matter, because some things can't be undone. "I don't hate you, Sarah," I said, "but I don't love you anymore either." She flinched like I'd slapped her. She nodded, wiping at her face. "I guess I deserve that." She stood up, looking around like she wanted to memorize the place one last time. Then, finally, "Goodbye, John." She walked out. I didn't stop her. I didn't even watch her go, because Sarah was my past, and my future, that belonged to me and Emily. The final chapter. Weeks passed, then months, and slowly, life started to feel normal again. Emily was happy. Work was steady. And me? I was finally free. Sarah tried to reach out a few times, but I never answered. She was just a memory now, a cautionary tale of what happens when someone takes everything they have and throws it away. As for revenge, I didn't need it anymore. Sarah had destroyed herself far better than I ever could. And honestly, that was enough.